So you understand that theology is taught before the words are used. But Roman Catholicism confuses explication of doctrine with development of doctrine. And that's how you got to all the innovations of what you're talking about, of Eucharistic adoration, and 1,000 other things in papalism that has nothing to do with biblical theology, nothing to do with patristic theology, and violates all the canons of the first 7 ecumenical councils.
How are you doing today, Jay?
Great, man. What's up?
Yeah, lovely to be here. Listen, I just had a question for you. I'm a Catholic, and
I'm sorry.
Your videos.
I'm sorry. I'm just joking. I'm just joking, man.
But I just had a question about Eucharistic adoration. Why is that not practiced in Eastern churches?
Right, so there is a version of that occurs during the liturgy of the pre-sanctified gifts, but in the Latin Church, this arose as a practice that was eventually disconnected from the liturgical celebration of the community. So for us, it doesn't make any sense to have Eucharistic adoration divorced from the actual full-on liturgical service. And that's why there's so many things that what trad cats think is, quote, trad cat Catholicism is actually just a Latin medieval or a post-Tridentine development. The ancient church didn't do that because they didn't separate communion or the reverencing of the gifts from the entire liturgical celebration, which includes the entire community.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for your answer.
Are you aware that that didn't occur in the first 1,000 years?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. It's a development within the church, but obviously, as Roman Catholics, we would see that as completely valid as a part of this beautiful process that God has put into place.
How is theology a process when we're told in the canons of the ancient councils that theology is not a process that doesn't evolve?
It doesn't evolve, but we discover. The Trinity, for instance, wasn't formally defined instantly, right?
So you think the Trinity is a discovery?
Yeah, we
So it wasn't. So it wasn't taught in the Old Testament.
It wasn't defined. Nobody did define it in that way.
So something is not the case until it's discovered and defined.
Well, we're not aware of it until that happens, right?
How did the New Testament writers argue the Trinity from the Old Testament?
Well, so they didn't. That's the thing. I mean,
you're saying that the New Testament writers didn't argue the deity of Christ and the deity of the Holy Spirit from the Old Testament.
They argued the elements of it, but they didn't actually argue the full definition of it.
How can you argue the elements? Do you understand that the dogmatic definitions are just explicating what's there?
Sure, but they help us understand it more fully, right? And the point is, we didn't actually understand it to that degree.
No, wait a minute. You said discovery. That's different than understanding it fully.
Well, you're discovering more about it, right?
So again, the New Testament writers argue the Trinity from the Old Testament. How does Justin Martyr argue against Trifo?
Well, I mean, I'm not as well read as you on that side, but
hold on. So this is pretty. But hold on, this is pretty important for the history of Trinitarian theology. I would think you would know that since you're arguing for the development of doctrine. What's the course of argument? What's the course of argument that Justin Martyr takes with Trifo, the Jew?
Well, this is an argument of this is commonality between us. So we both believe that these things actually were revealed to us, through a process. But
your church teaches that the Old Testament taught a Unitarian deity and that the New Testament revelation is of the Trinity. I don't believe that. And I'm showing you that the New Testament writers don't believe that, because how does Jesus argue for the relationship of the Father and the Son in the book of John?
Well, that's the thing. It's nuanced. There's so much. It's context dependent. It really depends on what.
How does he argue in John 5?
Well, look, I would need to get my Bible out if you want to talk that. But look,
I got mine out. Let's go to it. Do you want to see what he says in John 5?
Jay, we're in.
Don't repeat my name. Don't repeat my name. So I'm asking, and you're giggling. I'm asking you basic Trinitarian questions.
We agree. Why?
No, we don't.
Why do we need to?
We don't. I just told you fundamental disagreements. The Old Testament doctrine of the Trinity is why we believe in the Trinity. That's why Jesus refers to the relationship of Moses on the mountain in Exodus, and he says, I'm the one talking to Moses on the mountain in John 5 to the Pharisees. Okay? In John 16, 17, he talks at 15, 16, 17, he talks about the Holy Spirit. That Holy Spirit is all throughout the Old Testament as a distinct person. And that's why, for example, many of today's rabbis admit multiplicity in God in the Old Testament. The New Testament writers constantly refer to the Old Testament to prove the Trinity. The word Trinity has nothing to do with whether or not the doctrine of the Trinity is taught. And that's why the Trinity is in the Old Testament. Because Abraham believed in Father, he believed in angel of the Lord Logos, and he believed in the Holy Spirit. That's what the icon of the three visitors to Abraham means. So if you understood Trinitarian theology, you would know that. That's basic in Orthodox theology. Roman Catholic theology does not have that as basic because Roman Catholic theology does not have the Trinitarian doctrine that is correct. It has a heterodox development of doctrine, and you guys prove the development of doctrine, like Trent did in the debate with Trent, by saying that the Old Testament teaches a Unitarian deity and the New Testament teaches the Trinity. That is categorically false. So when Justin Martyr debates Trypho the Jew, he argues the Trinity from the Old Testament. That's before the codification of the doctrine of the Trinity. So you understand that theology is taught before the words are used. But Roman Catholicism confuses explication of doctrine with development of doctrine. And that's how you got to all the innovations of what you're talking about, of Eucharistic adoration, and 1,000 other things in papalism that has nothing to do with biblical theology, nothing to do with patristic theology, and violates all the canons of the first 7 ecumenical councils.
Wow. Okay. So look, I think that was beautiful. You, taking parts of the Old Testament and using that to support the doctrine of the Trinity. Totally.
No, hold on. Do you understand? Jesus and the church fathers do that. You said I'm doing it. Jesus and the church fathers do that.
No. Well, you repeated it, but that's beautiful. I totally agree.
Do they not do that?
But Jay, you said
do they not do that? Why are you repeating my name? Do they not do that?
Yeah, they do. They do. But Jay, you said something quite interesting. You actually said that Orthodox and Roman Catholics, we actually have different definitions of the Trinity.
Absolutely.
I think that's quite an extreme position.
No, it's 100% factual.
How so?
Because there are medieval councils excommunicating one another over the Trinity.
So in what way does our definition of the Trinity differ from yours?
Well, I just gave you an example that the Old Testament doesn't teach a Unitarian deity.
I agree.
So natural theology is not true, because natural theology usually predicates that the Old Testament teaches a Unitarian deity and the Trinity is a New Testament revelation.
If you read into it, but I mean...
Read into it.
Again...
So is that not Vatican II's doctrine of natural theology, or is it?
I think it's, an oversimplification.
No, this is why your church teaches that Muslims and Christians believe in the same God because they're monotheistic. Do you agree with that?
No, again, that's not what it says.
Yes, it does.
It's an interpretation of
no.
it, but
well, hold on. Wait a minute. It's an interpretation. I thought Vatican II and the documents of dogma are the interpretation. So you're saying that that's an interpretation of an interpretation?
Look, Jay.
Why do you keep repeating my name? Can you address the argument instead of look, Jay, look, Jay, Jay.
Why have you got a problem with me saying your name?
Because it's a deflection and it's a stupid tactic that's like NLP.
What? I'm just addressing you.
What? Why are you giggling?
That's crazy.
Yeah, okay.
What would you rather?
Enough of that.